I'm Sita Fay, Director of External Affairs.
I'm Jamie Buck, Director of Innovation.
This is Fundamental, the podcast from NYSIF, the organization at the intersection of finance, health, business, and labor in New York. Our first guest today is Gaurav Vashist, CEO and Executive Director of NYSIF. Welcome, Gaurav.
Thank you.
So, Gaurav, when we talk about NYSIF, we often describe the organization at the intersection of finance, health, workers, and business in New York. Tell us what that means to you.
Well, first let me say what a remarkable organization. And I think what truly makes this organization remarkable is the 2,000-strong unionized workforce that is the backbone of this incredible organization. And I will add, bringing folks like yourself on to kind of bring a unique dimension to that foundation is especially rewarding and helpful. Foundationally, we're an insurance entity, so we provide workers' comp, disability, paid family leave coverage to approximately 200,000 employers all across the state, all geographies, all industries, and all sizes. And through those entities, we provide coverage to approximately 2 million New Yorkers. So as a financial services company, we are consequential to the daily lives of a lot of families and a lot of businesses. So when you have that footprint and when you have that statutory mandate, you have to care about health outcomes. We care about injured workers. We want them to get better. We want them to get back to work. We are a fund, so we care about the capital markets, navigating those capital markets as long-term investors, looking at things like tariffs, like economic growth, like the labor market, and how those things impact our investment portfolio. And we're living in times of incredible innovation right now. So we are innovating likewise. But the challenge for us in terms of innovation is not innovation for the sake of innovation, but we want to innovate in a responsible way that does right by our workforce, that lifts morale. So when I say that we sit at the intersection of all these issues, that's why I say that. We sit at the intersection of healthcare. We sit at the intersection of financial markets, the economy, healthcare, labor. So all of these things are important to us.
You know, another term that you're always saying is marveling at the uniqueness of NYSIF. You've covered a lot of that. But how do you see us moving forward? And really, what's so unique about workers' compensation and disability benefits?
So the path forward for the organization is really built on 110 years of incredible history and really deeply rooted in the labor movement of 100 years ago. We look at Francis Perkins, pioneering figures like Francis Perkins, who've helped lead this organization, and they've gone on to do incredible things in history. And Frances Perkins' case, she went on to become the first female cabinet member under FDR, longest serving cabinet member. So that incredible history is truly inspiring as we think about the path forward. So we're building on that history, and the way we want to build on that history is by reconnecting ourselves to that history. So we're using our data to help workers and small businesses, and our work on long COVID is a clear example of that. We're pursuing policies to get people paid faster, more cheaply. So we've got, at any given point, approximately 120,000 or so injured workers out there. We want to pay them so that they get their funds. These are their money, right? So we want them to get access to their money quickly and cheaply. And we're using, the technological innovation that we've been talking about in a way that's responsible, helps build morale, and helps give people a satisfying career within NYSIF.
Gaurav, thank you. You've mentioned innovation, and until recently, insurance and innovation weren't two words that were used together fairly frequently. Can you talk about insurance coverage and providing insurance coverage at an organization like NYSIF that's been around since 1914?
Going back to our history, 100 years, 110 years of that history, we are foundationally the anchor for the workers' compensation market in New York State. Technology and innovation is within our DNA, and we're continuing to innovate as we have been. The North Star, as we innovate, is really a focus on our policyholders and the injured workers that we serve. And customer service, giving them the information that they need quickly, is very important. So one example of that is the recently launched Claims Mobile app that we've put forth. A really remarkable thing, when we started thinking about being able to provide information, core information to our claimants, we did a survey, and we found, first of all, that 86% of our injured workers have access to smartphone technology. So we thought that was an incredible opportunity for us to do something. But we also asked questions about what are the typical types of questions that injured workers call us about. And they were really, really simple, basic questions. Who's my claims manager? Where's my check? Those types of basic things. So we said, let's launch an app that injured workers can download on their phone and get access to this basic information at their fingertips. We launched this app about a year ago, and it's been fantastic. People have been downloading it. We're trying to increase those numbers, but we've had some pretty good results in terms of the number of downloads that we've had. And we're looking to build on things like that. So that's a core example of innovation. Going forward, there's no shortage of thinking about shiny objects in the sky, but I think what we want to focus on are the points of friction and bring some pragmatism into the discussion. So those points of friction where we can do the job better, where we can be much more efficient, that's where we're focused. And I'd like to turn the tables on you and ask you about your vision as the Director of Innovation at NYSIF. Given all of what I've said, what are some of the things that excite you about the technology?
Thank you. It's an awesome opportunity. As you mentioned, we have wonderful skill sets here at NYSIF. We have people with just great, deep subject matter expertise. And I think we're at a unique kind of crossroad where we can take advantage of the amazing things that are happening in the marketplace and providers that are there, couple that with things that we're doing and we're learning about, like you said, taking advantage of leveraging things that get back to the policyholders, like the claimant app. So we're at a crossroad, as mentioned, where we can take things that are in the marketplace. We're having very deep conversations with the latest and the newest insurtechs, right? Not everything is a one size fits all. So we need to do, and it's part of our ongoing strategy, to really uncover and determine there are specific examples and use cases where there's technology that we can be leveraging that ultimately has benefits for our end clients. And that's the fun and exciting work that we're doing right now. We're not going to be able to chase every shining object or the latest technology that comes out, but we're being, I think, very, very prescriptive in terms of how we're looking to partner with potential organizations and technologies, and then take that homework back on ourselves and say, where's the right fit and where we're going to get the most benefit ultimately for our internal teams that are working every day and supporting our customers, and as well as for our actual end clients as well. And the other component I would add to that is I think we're doing a good job of starting to really think about what being innovative means within our organization, what that means from an internal culture perspective, having teams be more collaborative and share and learn. So it's just a very exciting time here at NYSIF, and there's just so much more that we could do. And I think we're just scratching the surface.
I agree with you. I think there are two very important factors here. One is humility, and that's extremely important. And the other is pragmatism.
Yeah.
We can't chase everything. It's got to be focused on our business. It's got to be focused on what problem are we trying to solve. And then I think the rest of it is about change management. How do we implement on the vision in a way that brings the vision, the ideas into actual practice? And that's where the challenges arise.
Great. Thank you for that. We're going to shift gears a little bit. And recently, NYSIF has published several white papers. What's your approach to leveraging data and to inform the public policy and decision making based on that data?
Well, I think there's an important recognition that we have a treasure trove of information that we've been gathering over generations that we actually have an obligation to look at and analyze so that we can push forward on important big picture issues that might be out there in the public policy realm. So our work on long COVID is extremely important. That was the first example of kind of looking inward and saying, we've just had a pandemic. All the academics and healthcare officials and policymakers are focused on the pandemic. What can we do? What is our part? And so we said, well, who better to look at this information than a workers' compensation insurance company? So we looked at this information. We analyzed the information. We found that long COVID was a real issue, real problem, and we were able to publish a report that got significant attention. And that's a key example of how we think we can move the ball forward on a big picture issues. We followed that up with our work on climate. We wound up analyzing about 95,000 claims to see how claims are impacted on days of extreme heat. And we found some incredible information. We published a report on that, and we combined that with the launch of our pilot program for hospitals to help them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And that was the first industry we focused on because hospitals have a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, primarily scope 3 emissions, but it's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. But it's also an industry that understands the problem and is very motivated to do something about it. So we thought that we could serve as a catalyst to get the hospitals to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. That program is working really well. We've been able to get 8 large hospital systems to sign on, roughly 30 facilities. And then, we've been doing a lot of work in other places. I mentioned payments, being able to get people paid faster, and that was a lot of work focused on our data. The Claims mobile app was something that was focused inward, looking at our data. And fundamentally, I believe that the data that we have, that we've been sitting on for a long period of time, is data that can actually help improve the lives of people and businesses throughout New York.
The Fundamental Podcast is a clever play on words from the New York State Insurance Fund. We want our guests to share what is fundamental so our listeners have a true understanding of who you are, what you do, and why you're here at the intersection of NYSIF. You've served in various leadership roles under 4 governors and the former Fed chair. What's your fundamental advice for other executives and those serving in the public sector?
I've been very fortunate in my career to work with incredible people. And, it's working for Chairman Volcker, who was this legendary central banker, was just a phenomenal experience. I had an opportunity to sit at his feet for 6 years, learn from him. One of the most important things that I learned from him was to know the substance, to spend time to really understand complex subject matter. Don't have a superficial understanding of things. And I think that that's very important for people serving in leadership positions, because a lot of the work that as a leader you're going to do and a lot of the decisions you're going to make are going to be based on the substance. If you have a superficial understanding of things that are going on, you're more likely to make mistakes. So from my point of view, having worked with Chairman Volcker, that's the biggest piece of advice that I've taken with me over time. And I think what is helpful about that advice is that if you do the work at the front end, the job at the back end becomes a lot easier. As time goes on, you know the subject matter, you know the issues, and as problems arise, you're more likely to solve those problems. But that work at the front end is extremely important to do.
Thanks for sharing that, Gaurav. What's a fundamental principle that guides you? And maybe it ties it back into what you described in your previous discussion point with us.
Yeah, it truly is what you know. And I think it's extremely important, as I've said before, I think it's important to stay humble. As a leader, you don't know everything. You're going to rely on a lot of people around you. You want to have the best people around you guiding you. You want to be able to make decisions and solve problems in a way that's decisive, but at the same time, you don't want to be extremely rigid at the same time. So I think it's important as a leader to have that level of humility, but also understand the subject matter, try to solve problems decisively, but understand that you may need to reverse course sometimes, and that's perfectly fine.
You know, you talked about the chairman who's been a mentor to you. I really want to hear you elaborate more. You and I have had conversations. The passing of Dick Ravitch was very sad. I know he was a mentor to you. I really want you to inform our guests, how have your mentors informed you in how you lead today? And, as you become a mentor to others, right? You're the CEO and executive director of the agency. We talk about mentorship here at NYSIF. We have a mentor program. Some of us are serving as mentors right now. I really want to hear how they informed you about how you lead today, particularly some of those men and other people in your life, how they've been mentors to you.
Mentorship is extremely important. Extremely important. Chairman Volcker and Richard Ravitch were both just incredible mentors to me. In fact, Dick Ravitch was the one who introduced me to Chairman Volcker. They used to share an office suite, so he brought me in, introduced me, and I was very nervous the first time I met Chairman Volcker. But then the next 6 or 7 years, I was literally in his office almost every day, talking to him about all kinds of issues. And you really had to prepare to go walk into the office of the former Fed chair and talk to him about things like financial stability and monetary policy and whatever else was happening. So that's where the substance piece comes into place. Dick Ravitch was, I would say one of the most consequential figures in my life, professionally speaking. Very generous with his time, and I got incredible opportunities to sit with him, talk to him, hear from him about his views on lots of different things. So whatever I bring to this job is just due the generosity and the time spent with both Dick Ravitch and Paul Volcker. I will say that there's a lot of opportunity for mentorship generally. Not everybody is a public figure. There have been incredible people in my life who are not public figures, whose names are not widely known. And I'll give you an example. There was somebody who I worked with in prior jobs as a young lawyer who would attribute their ideas to me in front of my boss. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine somebody being so bright and so generous that they would have brilliant ideas and they would actually sometimes attribute those ideas to me? And, I would sit there shaking my head, thinking to myself, I never thought that one up. Maybe I should say something. but they were doing it to create a sort of an environment for me where people would notice me and think about me when the next opportunity arose. So I'm not suggesting that people should go and do that exactly, but
Jamie,
that's an example.
All of your ideas are now my ideas.
We'll have to talk about that.
But it's important. Look, it's important from a mentorship perspective. Every one of us has people around them. There are a lot of young people within the organization. I think everybody should do what they can to create opportunities for people that report to them that are talented, that are doing their job in good faith and with dedication.
Thanks for sharing that. Those are powerful perspectives and insights, and just an amazing journey that you've been on. I think with that, what would be interesting to have the audience hear a little bit more about is you talked about getting that deep subject matter expertise, right? Really knowing the content. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that journey for you here at NYSIF, like that attacking that learning curve from where you initially started almost 3 years ago to where you are now.
Yeah, so my history with NYSIF actually goes back when I was in the governor's office back in 2007. NYSIF was one of my portfolio agencies, so I knew quite a bit about NYSIF and helped work on the 2007 workers' comp reform to some extent. From a substance point of view, I don't think the challenges were that significant. I think the biggest challenge as a leader we all face is change management and serving as the catalyst to actually drive change. And how do you take people who are incredibly talented, who have the institutional knowledge, are experts at what they do, and channel their energy in a way that changes the organization for the better of the organization? And that's a core leadership skill and issue and style that you have to have. So that has been, frankly, the biggest challenge is to be able to channel the energy and the expertise and the dedication of all these incredible people that sit all around me in a way that drives change forward for the betterment of the organization.
It's really like the unlocking of that talent and those capabilities.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Gaurav, you were touching on this when you were talking about mentorship. Recently, our team here had a Women's History Month event, and the guest speaker talked about her mother. And that was one of the things that was really reflected. I've also probed you personally and heard you talk about your grandfather. Tell us the story about your grandfather and when you saw his name. One of the things we've talked about is that impact that you have, you might not always see right away, whether it's the report you've written, the published work that you see, your work in a book in the future. And then we talk about our personal lives. We've talked about these mentors such as, Dick Ravitch and Chairman. And then, Jamie and I were talking before about families and where we are, ages and stages of life. And then you have this incredible story about your grandfather. I want you to share that with our guests.
Sure. So a couple of years ago, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, I was rifling through our family archives and happened to come across a program of the coronation of King George VI. It was sometime in May of 1937. And just scanning the attendees, I saw the name of my grandfather listed under clerical and bookkeeping staff. He was among just a handful of people listed under that category. So I started digging a little bit more and speaking to family members. And what I realized and found was that my grandfather was this incredible mathematician. And, living in British India, he really didn't have a lot of opportunities, but he was dedicated to mathematics. He had books of proofs and theorems, and he was immersed. And so, in that time, in that place of oppression, what does a person like that do? He became a bookkeeper for the British, and they liked him. So they brought him along for the coronation, and he went on a ship to England, and he wound up sitting somewhere, who knows where, in that coronation as a 27-year-old talented person. And I think about that time period and that place of oppression, and I think about how lucky I am, how lucky we all are to be living in a time when we can rise to our potential, understanding that there are imperfections and all sorts of problems in our times today as well. But comparing it to what my grandfather lived through, was a completely different time. And to be in a position to lead the New York State Insurance Fund as the first person of Asian descent is remarkable. And to be given this opportunity, I think my grandfather would have been very proud, and he would have gotten a kick out of the fact that I'm in this position, having maybe, some small fraction of his talents. To be given this opportunity is a really remarkable thing. And I keep that in the back of my mind whenever I do my job, waking up every day, coming to work.
Amazing story. Gaurav, this has been incredible. How lucky we are to have you as our first guest to kick off this first podcast. We're really pleased with having you here and spending the time with us and sharing.
Gaurav, thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you for being the first guest on our podcast. We start with the CEO and Executive Director of NYSIF, and we're going to continue to go up from here.
Thank you for making me the guinea pig for this wonderful experiment that you're doing with this podcast.
This is Fundamental, the podcast from NYSIF.
Our next guest will be Dr. Trin, cardiac anesthesiologist and medical director of sustainability at Mount Sinai, to discuss climate action in healthcare.